everyone, and welcome to this week's Organic Matters podcast. So this week we have John McCormick, and he is from the Helen's Bay Organic, and it sells vegetables, and it does a few other things in between that as well. But John, you're very welcome. And for listeners out there, do tell us a bit about Helen's Bay and what you're up to.
Right. Well, Helen's Bay Organic Farm is a 20-acre farm on the shores of Belfast Lough. We're actually about 12 miles from the centre of the city. And we are in the kind of middle of the metropolis of peri-urban living. So we're surrounded by a lot of people within a sort of 10 to 15 mile radius. Of the 20 acres, there's actually only really 8 of it suitable for vegetable growing, and we use all 8 of it. We have it divided up into 7 plots. So we have winter vegetables on 3 plots. On a 3-year rotation. We have sort of autumn vegetables or late summer autumn vegetables, again on a 3-year rotation, similar size plots again. And then we have a no-dig area, well, a minimum till area. It's not no-dig because we till it, but it started 3 or 4 years ago, and it's our 7th site. All the sites are approximately the same. Some are slightly bigger, some are slightly smaller, but basically they're nearly all the same size. And the no-till area is our summer vegetables, and it's divided again in 2. So we have early vegetables on one side and 16 beds by 100 meters, and then we have another 16 beds by 100 meters to follow on from that. So that gives us our vegetables right up until sort of August, and then from August we move into what we call then the autumn fields and early winter, and then we move over to the winter veg, which are what we've got sort of from the beginning of winter, really from November onwards, although we're already picking some of the leeks out of that at the moment.
And it's a stunning part of the world. I used to live in Northern Ireland, so I'm familiar with it. But I know you started back in 1991, and I'm just wondering, was it always an area that grew vegetables? Was it in your family? Did it do other things, or how did you come about it?
No, it was just something I wanted to do. It was a passion. It was a niche that had to be scratched when I was 39. And I knew that I was young enough that if it didn't work, I'd find something else. And if it did work, well, great. Well, luckily it did work. And I started off just on a 1-acre site with a vintage tractor and a donkey.
Which was more use, the tractor or the donkey?
Well, they were both very useful. My donkey was he was a family pet. I had him for a good few years. He was very well trained to the harness because I had a harness for him as well, and I'd already been using him a little bit. I was farm manager of the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum, and I'd had him there when I was working there, and I'd already used him a bit on interrow, pulling a grubber in between the vegetables. And for the first couple of years before I bought myself a steerage hoe, that's how I cleaned the vegetables on the drills, was walking up and down behind the donkey, and very effective, really. But anyway, that's how it started. And it was initially I was doing markets and not delivering, but just going to people's houses and letting them buy out of the van. After a couple of years, a box scheme developed, then a farm shop, and then St. George's Market. And then every year since then, it's just grown.
Why organic?
Oh, I was studying horticultural science at UCD in Dublin way back. I'm 70 now, so that's a long time ago. And I had gone to a festival called Mustard Festival, which was the alternative festivals of those time, and I started to get some of the magazines that were out at that time as well from the Northwest, Rod Alston and all those, and it made sense to me. And what I was learning in the university it was science based on how to deliver chemicals, and I already knew that. We were already talking about climate change, soil depletion, pollution, the dangers of pesticide and biodiversity loss way back then. That's 45 years ago. And it just made sense to me. Now, nobody agreed. None of my fellow students agreed with me. And least of all, my professor and my tutor. And after 2 years of this, I had to go and do a year's practical training. And I very fortunately, with the first 6 months, they sent me where they wanted me to go, which was a very intensive glass house chemical. I hated every minute of it. And then the second was my choice. And I wanted an organic farm. The only one I could find at that time that was operating organically were the Camp Hill communities in Gorey in County Wexford, who ran residential homes for people with disabilities, with farms and gardens. And I ended up in the garden there. And that's really how I started off.
And I guess, I mean, you'd hope that there's been a bit of a sea change since then. And it sounds like you're meeting your consumers as well, or your customers. What's the feedback? I mean, what's that sea change that you've witnessed possibly from that time all the way back then to now?
Well, the sea change is that in those days when we first started, it was all about health of the individual. Organic veg was about eating healthily. And less so about the environment and the soil and the biome and all that sort of stuff we're talking about today. Over the years, that has gradually changed. And so to the extent that when I started off as a vegetable farmer, I'm now a worm farmer, because that's really what I describe myself as. I think that the care for the environment, and less so, well, I think the aspect of eating healthily and food that doesn't poison you is really important and has remained to be important. But it now embraces so much more. It embraces climate change, carbon sequestration, non-usage of poisons, biodiversity loss, trying to readdress the biodiversity loss, exciting research stuff like pest predator research as to what flowers are the most beneficial you can grow in between your vegetables. Things like, how wonderful a plant, but we all know buckwheat is for potassium scavenging. There's so much more we don't know. There's even things in the ground we don't even know yet about. So I think this is where the excitement is. This is where the future lies, because it's addressing the really critical problems that we're facing as climate change comes towards us and what that's going to deliver.
Do you think customers get that now? Do you think they understand that now?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. But not everybody understands it. It's really important. We've just had an open day at the weekend. We had over 275 people come for the open day. We do it £5 charge for adults, children free, dogs free, and as long as they're on a lead. And we had 275 people come, and we did farm walks where I went around, for an hour and talked. And my head gardener also went around for an hour and talked. So we had 2 walks, but we were very clear about what we wanted to do was to really explain to them, about how what about carbon and oxygen and nitrogen in the environment and oil and coal and how it all came about. Like 200 million years ago, we produced the oil with these amazing plants that grew and fell back into the earth over 68 million years in the swamps, built up peat, which then, because they were so carbon hungry, robbed the environment full of carbon. Then we ended up with a situation where there was too much oxygen. So where did that trigger? It triggered an ice age. The weight of the billions of tons of ice crushed all this stuff, made oil and gas and coal, and then 200 million years later, what have we gone and done? We have pumped all that carbon back up into the atmosphere, and we have robbed the atmosphere of most of its oxygen, not all of it because we're still breathing, but a lot of its oxygen by chopping down all the trees. What's the consequence? Too much carbon, not enough oxygen. You end up with climate change. It's as simple as that. It's getting those messages and many more. Things about biodiversity change, biodiversity loss, and what you can do to readdress that within the farmscape, and how important that is for farmers to understand, how important it is for research projects. If we could only get a fraction of what goes into chemical production to research projects on improving those sort of things, what an incredible change that would make for the world. So it's getting that message out to people in a totally understandable way, that that's what we're trying to achieve, no matter how imperfect we are, and we are imperfect. It's still something they need to know, and they can carry that with also their health interests in wanting to eat food and give their children food that doesn't have chemicals on it and that's nutritious and full of minerals.
And I guess as well, you talk a lot earlier on maybe about your donkey ploughing the donkey and using the donkey to kind of was a ploughing or to kind of clear way for the crops. And we had Trevor Harris a couple of weeks ago on the podcast talking about thoughtful tillage and setting his plough at kind of a lower rate because he's very conscious as well of the worms. So he sets it at a certain depth so it doesn't go too deep, and he goes at a certain rate when he's ploughing, so because he doesn't want to disturb that kind of deep soil biome that's in there. I guess for you technically now, when you're growing crops, and you'd mentioned kind of a little bit of tilling, not totally min-till, but I mean, how has your thinking come now, say kind of technically, when you're ploughing the soil or when you're clearing the soil for vegetables? How do you manage that?
Yeah, very interesting question. About 4 years ago, we started the minimum till area. We don't plow it anymore. It's 1.5 acres divided in two. And what we do is when we're finished, the early vegetables are all finished by August. I have already sown on by the 20th of August, I have sown a very dense mixture of about 7 different things, but mostly it's rye and vetch and buckwheat, phacelia, and a few other bits and pieces in among it. And what we do, and then it's now already about sort of 9 inches above the ground by the time November comes, when things slow down and stop growing. It'll be about maybe 18 inches to 20 inches off the ground. It'll be a really good, thick, solid stand. Now, we use a lot of seeds, so we make it very thick. And it creates a fantastic blanket. Even at the stage it is now, which is a few inches out of the ground, it's already producing nitrogen nodules on the veg plants. We then because we don't plow that, what we do then is that area, which is half that field, gets covered in black silage tarps. Okay, we cover it with fleece. Then the nets we use for keeping birds and rabbits off which are very big. They cover the whole area, and then we put loads and loads of sandbags full of stones. Never put sand in your sandbags. Always put stones because they're free draining. The sand holds the water and it gets all rotten and they won't last very long. And then we leave that sitting for the winter, and everything underneath just rots. When we take it off, all we have to do is tickle the surface and start planting in. And what we do then on the other side is it's coming a little later. So we're starting to plant it up in May instead of March. So it's only just coming free now. Nearly every, I planted a little bad this year. We've got some stuff in there that's still there. It ought to be free by now, by the middle of September, but it's not. It's going to be the end of the month. We have another 2 weeks of cropping there, I'd say, at the most, on a couple of beds. Then what I'll do is I'll flail mow it, and also Westerwolds ryegrass with vetch. That's about all that's worth sowing this time. Not with vetch, sorry, with Westerwolds ryegrass with crimson clover. And we'll sow that out on that patch, and then it will grow over the winter. So when we take the silage tarps off the left-hand side in March, the other side is about maybe 18 inches, 2 foot high. It's grown all winter. By March, it's grown quite tall. It's lovely and green. We'll flail mow it, move the tarps over onto that, and it only takes 6 weeks for that lot to die off. Take it off, fold them up, put them away for the summer, and we tickle that area and plant into it. And what I mean by tickling is I'm going onto it with a tractor, with a bed maker attached. But we don't put it very deep. The blades themselves are only 6 inches anyway, and then we don't go down the full depth. We try to keep it at about 4. So we're only, as I said, tickling the surface and planting into it, just to break it up and make it friable. And what I forgot to mention was that on one plot we're putting on the compost in the autumn and the other putting it on early spring, in order to make sure, and nothing's going in there that doesn't meet the 90-day requirement for, E. coli transference risk.
Okay.
Even though it's spent mushroom compost that's been sitting around we keep it for over a year, even though it's been well composted and used before that. We keep it for a year outside before we use it, 9 months to a year. And so that's our minimum till. Now, we're a fairly large farm. We have 7 other plots, over an acre and a half, a quarter to an acre and a half each. To try and do that, it would be impossible. We have no choice but to plow. So we're plowing to depth. Again, I use a contractor. I'm a hopeless plowman. I was great with my horses when I could plow great with a horse. I loved plowing with a horse, but it's too slow and I'm too old. So I get a contractor to do my plowing, but the older contractor used to do it for me. It was really tough. I could never get him to stay shallow. Whereas this fellow who's just taken over from him now, who's a younger man, he's brilliant. And he only goes down to about 6 inches, 7 at the most. And so we're really pleased over that. And I make sure before he comes in and plows, we have a mixture of green manures and crop residue left over on those 6 plots. So I make sure I go in and skim rotivate very shallow to chop everything up into bits. So that it makes it really easy for him to plow shallow. He doesn't have to plow deep to bury everything because I've chopped it all up in advance. Okay. So he's able to just plow over very shallow.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then do you spray any kind of nutrients? We talked to a farmer a while ago who had his own kind of compost tea and comfrey kind of compost tea that he was using. Do you use anything like that?
No, the only external input we're using on our vegetables would be the bought-in organic, and it is organic, spent mushroom compost. We don't spray. I don't have any sprayers. I don't spray anything. No, I probably should.
It might be something for the future. I mean, that's what's interesting. I think about a lot of organic farmers. They're evolving all the time. They're not afraid to try things.
Yeah, I look at my brassicas and sometimes think, I wish I had the foresight at the time to send leaves away and have them analyzed and just see what the mineral content is and figure out what deficiency we've got. I know I've got a bit of boron deficiency, but again, I just don't like the concept of spraying, so I don't spray. Yeah. And I'm willing to, we're willing to get a little bit of hollow heart in my cauliflower because that's the only crop it really affects. It does affect Swedes as well, but I don't grow Swedes. Nobody likes them, so there's no point in growing them.
I love Swede. Oh my God.
I love Swedes as well, but you say that to my customers, they're not interested.
Mashed Swede with plenty of butter and salt.
Nothing nicer. I agree. Yeah.
In terms of your customers and I guess the business element of it, and how has that, I guess, challenged you, or how have you made a success of it?
Well, I always think my business survives and grows despite me, to be honest with you. My only interest is in growing vegetables. I have some really good people working for me. I mean, I have 11 employees, equivalent to 6 full-time jobs. And on my admin and marketing side, which are all part-time jobs, the two people who are really involved in that, which coordinate with me to some extent, drag me along to some extent, they're just brilliant. They do a lot of we do a newsletter every week out to our customers with what's in your box and then something interesting, and then I would write occasionally for them. I make little videos which we have up on YouTube. I did it all last year. I didn't do any this year for a variety of different reasons that I won't go into now, but I will be doing them again next year. And so keeping people informed and interested is a marketing tool. Conventional marketing doesn't work, okay. 2-for-1's a load of nonsense. Trying to add adverts in newspapers and things like that, it doesn't bring in the customers you want. You just got to make yourself visible. Your van is your most. I've got 2 vans out 3 days a week and one of them out 4 days a week. Having good signage on the vans that's catchy, people see. So if they're interested in organic, they'll either note the name or they'll take the phone number down and phone or onto the website. Having We do spend a bit of money on Facebook advertising, which is drawing people to our Facebook page. That actually does work, and but it's, a box scheme is and even a CSA, I'm sure, is no different. To get 3 long-standing customers who will stay with you forever, you got to get 10. People are fickle. People they think the idea is great. God, it would be wonderful to get a bag of vegetables every week, and then they discover they don't really cook vegetables, and it starts to pile up on them, and then they don't like this, and they don't like that, and eventually it's much better they just come to the farm shop or go to our stall in St. George's Market, and but finding those who actually want to eat what I want to eat every week, because that's what our boxes are, and what's in season, they represent the minority of people who actually join the box scheme. A lot of them just stop. Some of them move over, as I say, to the choose your own options. We also do a click and collect, choose your own. So then the core that stay with you are there forever. I just met my very, very first customer at the open day. He came to visit. He and his wife came to the open day, and it was really nice to see them again, because I don't get out and about visiting. They're still buying vegetables off me. And the coincidence was that I got a phone call in the spring from a school saying, could we do something? And I said, yeah, I'll do pumpkins with you. We'll sow pumpkins with the kids. It's something I used to do before, and I've started to do again. I'll do pumpkins with the kids. There's 60 of them in 2 classes. And we did in 2 separate days. We sowed pumpkins at the school. I took the pots, raised the plants. They came and planted them. And then they'll come back now in the autumn and harvest them, bring them to the school, set up a market stall, do all the sums and maths and all the good stuff that they need to learn for the curriculum in the process of doing all that, and sell them. And then they choose the charity that they want to send the money to. So it's a good project. But the reason the reason I got sidetracked onto that was why? Well, what was the question you asked me?
I got so lost in what you were saying that I can't even remember the question I was asking you.
But well, let's try to remember, because I think it was something important.
I guess it was around customers and how you keep them.
Oh yeah, keeping your customers. The reason I mentioned that was because, believe it or not, the teacher who arrived was married to the babe in arms that was in that woman's arms when she came to my farm shop as the first customer, who's now adopted. And they get a box of vegetables every week.
That's brilliant.
Isn't that wonderful? Totally wonderful.
Yeah, and it must give you a tremendous sense of pride as well.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny, I've got a big business. I've got a lot of things going on the farm. We've got community gardens, about 12 or 14 community gardeners. We've got 2 big allotments, which are, one is a lot of flowers, an incredible collection of shrubs and flowers on about 1/2 an acre with vegetables mixed in. The other is vegetables with flowers mixed in, and a lot of fruit. Which are just absolutely wonderful to see. They're just very beautiful, and very well maintained. So there is a social enterprise aspect to our business, which is equally as important as the business side, and one supports the other. And I think really creating something like that means that in any day I can have to have 15 people working on the farm. And they do amazing work and do a fantastic amount of work. And they do all the work, but I'm more than happy to take all the credit at this stage of my life.
Very good. And I guess, do you have any parting words of wisdom then for anyone who's listening and might be wanting to grow, to start their own vegetable patch, or maybe they're doing it and maybe they're wondering how to grow it or expand it a little bit more?
Well, when I remember the ploughman who came to plough my very first field, and he said to me, "Oh, you may be able to plough the field, but you never grow anything in it. This is a heavy clay. You're not going to grow vegetables here." And then he came back in the autumn and said, "Well, you might be able to grow, but you'll never be able to sell it." If you're passionate enough and believe in it enough, you'll make it work, because you will work every hour of the day, 7 days a week, and you eat, sleep, and drink vegetables. and you'll make it work. It'll be hard work. It will be a lot of stress at certain times, and it won't always everything work for the first few years. It's great if you've got a supplementary income coming in. If your partner is maybe working and you're working on the farm, that would be very helpful. When I started up, I already had 5 children, and the benefits for having working families tax credits were very generous in those days, not anymore. Yeah. And so, even though I didn't make much money with the extra working families tax credits, I made a living wage. And bit by bit, I needed those less because I made more money. Yeah. And so that helped me through those early years. That's not so available today. I even got grants from that are not available because they don't finance agriculture up here. I think in the South it's quite different, but up here, up until now, at least, and I don't know if it'll change or not, but the agriculture production was never financed. But they would never buy you a tool or a machine or in any way finance production. I got grants from my box scheme because it was an alternative enterprise on the farm, and so that was a way of getting money to help me go. So getting a few grants, getting working tax credits, and having very enthusiastic partner and children to help me on the farm. And my donkey, don't forget. We just, bit by bit, it grew and it grew and it grew. I still don't make much more than I ever made before, pro rata relative to inflation. I make a bit more. We've had some very, very good years, and we've had some very bad years. But by and large, we've survived. And I now pay, I pay agricultural rate to everybody. Getting a tiny bit more some years at an agricultural rate myself, and other years I don't get that much, but overall it's that. Sometimes I've made a lot more, and I've managed to make some savings from my pension. So yeah, it's just stick at it, and don't be frightened to go to organic growers like me and many others and ask questions. Pick people's brains, go on the walks, go on the tours. They're terribly important. When I started out, they were essential. There was only about 10 or 15 of us in the whole of the country, north and south, and we had great days, sometimes even long weekends, which turned into huge parties and picking each other's brains, and lots of wonderful food and great wine and beer flowing, people singing in the evening and the children camping with us. And there was a real camaraderie and bonhomie. And let's not lose that. I hope that can be maintained and into the future, because that's really important, that you feel you have a brotherhood there of fellow-minded people doing the same thing, supporting you, helping you, there at the end of the phone if you've got a problem. That's really, really important. Don't hesitate to ask questions.
Brilliant. That's absolutely super. And John, thank you so much for that. I love that, and we'll all stick at it, I think. But if anyone's interested in finding out more about John and his farm, the website is helensbayorganic.com. And for anyone interested in organics in general, you can visit the Irish Organic Association website. It's www.irishorganicassociation.ie. But from all of us here at Organic Matters, thank you very much, and we will be back again next week.